I first learned about Tanner Bishop when I was playing in a youth basketball league. He went to a different school than I did. Our teams would play each other on Saturdays at the boys' club. He was one of those kids who matured early and was 5 or 6 inches taller than everyone else. After thinking about it, I decided that my team had played pretty well against Tanner's team. The difference in talent was obvious. I also noticed that as soon as Tanner's team got ahead, he would start fooling around, showing off, passing behind his back, shooting three-pointers, etc. We came back, and although the final score was never in doubt, we made the game a little more competitive than it should have been. We ended up at the same high school and both played football in our freshman year. That's when I officially met Tanner. As I suspected, Tanner was big, athletic, and popular on the football field. Naturally, he was the quarterback. I, on the other hand, was trying out for the running back position. Our coach used a two-back system. There was a guy on our team named Nat Whitfield who was the fastest running back. I was second fastest. I wasn't as fast as Nat, but I was a good blocker, protected Tanner when he passed, was a decent runner, and could catch a pass coming out of the backfield. Tanner was a flashy player, and I was a steady one. On defense, Tanner was an average linebacker, and I played defensive back. When he was playing defense, he often tried to make spectacular saves, and I had to cover him from my position as a defensive back. We were pretty good, and I started to bond with the group of players. Of course, Tanner was the center of that group. They say opposites attract, and although Tanner and I had a lot in common, we were almost opposites in character. He was loud, popular, and outgoing. I, on the other hand, was a bit introverted, serious, and definitely not flashy. But somehow we became good friends. Tanner was smart, but not always attentive. More than once, I shared my notes with him or helped him prepare for a test at the last minute. Usually, the reason for his inattention in class was some girl. In return for my help with his studies, I gained social recognition in Tanner's solar system. After class, at lunch, and at school dances, there was always a crowd of girls and boys around Tanner. I was drawn into this circle of friends. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't a nerd, but compared to Tanner, we all looked a little dull. Thanks to this friendship, I became a member of a popular group. During our first few years of high school, none of us had girlfriends. We did all the things high school kids usually do, but we didn't have steady partners. Everything changed in middle school. Out of the blue, and I still don't know how it started, Tanner got a girlfriend, Anne-Marie Dubois. Anne went to St. Cecilia's Catholic school on the other side of town. The fact that she went to a Catholic school and not ours gave her a certain local exoticism. This exoticism was reinforced by her appearance. Anne was of average height, about 5'7". She had dark, almost black hair. She had olive skin and an attractive heart-shaped face. Her eyes were slightly almond-shaped and her lips were full. She was very beautiful, but what impressed me most was her body. She was slim, with a thin waist and an athletic build. Prom was approaching, and Tanner was clearly in love with the beautiful Anne. I didn't have a date. One day, a week before the dance, Tanner and I were sitting in the cafeteria. "Max, do you have a date for next week's dance?" Tanner asked me. I sensed that he was up to something. Although I considered him a close friend, perhaps my best friend, he rarely expressed interest in my life. It was a little unusual for him to ask about my plans for prom. "No, not yet," I replied. There were many attractive girls at our school, but none of them caught my attention. "In that case, Anna has a friend, Mia. She's really nice and isn't dating anyone right now," Tanner told me. "Tanner, I don't know her. I've never met her. She doesn't know me," I replied, but still asked, "What does she look like?" I guess I was curious. It turned out that Maya Battle was also in third grade at St. Cecilia's School. While Anna was athletic and tall, Mia was petite. If Anna was a beautiful girl, Mia was more cute, small, slim, and sweet. We first met at McDonald's. Tanner and I went there together. Mia came with Anna. I think I passed some kind of test with Mia, and of course she did too. The following Saturday, we went to prom with Tanner and Anna. After the dance, I told Mia that I had a good time. She said she liked it too. I liked her. She was fun and funny, and the fact that she went to a different school made her seem mysterious to us. I found out from Tanner that she liked me too. We started dating. St. Cecilia's school was having a Christmas dance. I guess because it was a religious school, they weren't allowed to say Christmas. In our politically correct high school, all December performances had to be called winter performances. Nevertheless, It was a big holiday at St. Cecilia's, and Tanner and I were invited to the dance. The dance wasn't held in some dingy school gym, but in the ballroom of the Hilton Hotel in the city center. We entered the hall, Tanner, Anna, Mia, and me, and I wasn't prepared for the hostility from the St. Cecilia boys. They treated us like raiders from another village intent on stealing their women. As we passed by, we heard a few comments, but I didn't see a single friendly male face. I was dancing with Mia, and this guy, dark-haired and stocky, was getting in my way. I politely gave Mia my place on the dance floor. After 2 dances, she joined me at our table. Later, we danced again, and the same guy tried to interfere. "Michael, I'm dancing with my boyfriend, Max," she said. "I already danced with you." "One more dance, Mia?" he asked and tried to pass, pushing me slightly but keeping his eyes on Mia. "Hey," I said and pushed him away. "She doesn't want to dance with you," I told him. Hearing this, Michael turned to me with anger and malice in his eyes and punched me in the chin. I saw stars for a second, but I didn't fall. Before he could hit me again, I grabbed him and knocked him to the ground. Mia screamed at both of us, and then Michael's friends intervened. I felt my arms being grabbed and pulled away. As I was being pulled away from him, I managed to land a good kick on his leg. Now, 2 of Michael's friends were holding my arms, and he was still approaching me with the same angry look on his face. That's when Tanner stepped in. I told him that Tanner was one of the biggest guys in school, and he was still just as big and intimidating. He pushed Michael away and ordered his friends to let me go. At that moment, one of the chaperones approached. The fight, if you could call it that, was officially over. The chaperones conferred, and I noticed that one of Michael's friends was talking to one of the chaperones, probably one of the parents. The adult nodded in agreement. The gist of the incident was this: Tanner and I were kicked out of the dance. Any attempts to protest were quickly quashed. They had the advantage of their home turf. Mia and Anna kindly leave with us. As we walk out, I hear Michael say, "See you later, cool guy." Our eyes meet as the 4 of us leave the ballroom. I'm not used to having enemies. Even on the sports field, I try to be a good player and shake my opponent's hand, no matter how fierce the game. This is a new experience. Tanner and Anna laugh as we leave. Mia clings to me like a mistress as we all leave the Hilton. "It's early and we're not full from dancing," Tanner says. "Let's go to Bernie's Cafe." We sit down at the cafe and talk a little about the dance. "Max, thanks for protecting me," Mia says, hugging me. Tanner and Anna laugh about the fight. "You showed them, Tiger," Tanner comments, laughing. "Who was that jerk?" he asks. "Just some guy," Mia replies. "A little more than just some guy," Anna adds. Then she tells us the whole story. This guy, Michael Amechi, had been Mia's boyfriend for most of her sophomore year. Over the summer, she caught him with another girl and they broke up. He had been trying to get Mia back ever since. "Let's not talk about Michael," Mia interrupted. "You're my boyfriend now," she declared, snuggling up to me on the cafe bench. Boyfriend. Apparently, all it took was pushing a guy, getting punched, and now my status had changed from dating to boyfriend. Meeting Michael Amechi seemed to have made an impression on Mia. She became more attentive and seemed happy when she was around me. We sat, ate, and chatted. I hadn't spent this much time with Anna before. I noticed that aside from her looks, she was a sweet and caring girl. She asked if I had any bruises from the fight and looked concerned. I assured her that I was fine. In the end, we had a good time. Even though we got kicked out of the dance, we still had fun. I also realized how much I liked Mia. That night, I saw her in a different light. A good light. Maybe I was starting to fall in love with her. And I also felt that her feelings for me were growing too. I know, it's just a harmless school romance, but for me, it was much deeper than that. As the weeks went by, I quickly realized that the time I spent with Mia was the best time of my life. Besides enjoying the time I spent with Mia, our relationship was also developing. I got to know her family, and she got to know mine. We did everything you normally do in a relationship. We had dinner with her family, went to events with mine, went on double dates with Tanner and Anna, and much more. We also talked about the future. In senior year, we started preparing for college. We took exams, submitted applications, and visited college campuses. In my mind, our relationship was an integral part of the future. Perhaps those thoughts weren't as strong for Mia. I was an only child. My parents and I were very close. We weren't a large, close-knit family. My father had a sister who lived next door. My mother's relatives were in the Midwest, and we didn't see them very often. My father owned an insurance company, John Early Insurance. That summer, I started working in his office from 8 in the morning until noon, 3 days a week. The other 2 days, I helped my Aunt Helen around the house. Aunt Helen never married and lived in an old house with a huge yard that belonged to my grandparents in the suburbs of what used to be a town. Many years ago, the city limits had crossed Helen's property. New neighborhoods had sprung up around it. Her house stood in the center of a large plot of land that was several acres in size. Many developers were interested in this valuable piece of land. Helen had no intention of selling it. I was close to Aunt Helen, but she was strange. She was always whispering or humming, and there was a constant noise coming from her mouth. I got used to it, but it was quite strange. With such a large property, there was always something to do. When I came to help her, she would give me a list of things to do for the day. She was always kind and pleasant, and I felt that she loved me. But she never paid me a penny or thanked me when I finished my work. Before I left, she would always give me ice cream in a bun. That was all. One day, on my way back from Aunt Helen's, I said to my father, "She never pays me." "Don't worry, you'll get paid," Dad said. I didn't understand what he meant. Between working at my dad's office, helping Aunt Helen, and playing football, my summer was busy. But I still had time for Mia. I tried to see her every evening if possible, but it was usually a few times a week. Looking back, I realized that everything was fine between us. It just wasn't developing into anything more. At the end of the summer, before football practice started, my family went on a 2-week trip to California. We went there every year. This year, I wasn't as excited. I was going to miss Mia. As soon as we got back from vacation, football practice started. Tanner and I drove to practice together, and I realized that we had hardly seen each other over the summer. "How's Anna?" I asked him on Monday as we drove home. "Fine," Tanner replied casually. "What?" I replied. "When did this happen? Why didn't you tell me?" I bombarded him with questions. I was in shock from everything that had happened. Calm down, Max," Tanner grinned, looking at my confusion. "Hey, we're seniors. I didn't want to get involved in my last year of school," he explained. "But damn it, Tanner," I said. "Anna is beautiful and so sweet. She's perfect," I said. "Wow," he said. "Looks like Max has a crush on Anna?" He looked around and smiled at me. "Tanner," I said, "it's not like that. You two are just perfect for each other. I thought you and Anna had been dating for a long time." I told him. "Max, we're in high school," he said. "Relationships like that don't last long in high school. There are plenty of girls in the world. Sure, Anna's great, but we're too young to tie ourselves down. Maybe in 10 years, but not now," he explained. I thought about his words silently as we drove home. I thought about Tanner and all those girls. I thought about Mia and our future. And I also thought about the beautiful Anna. On Saturday evening, I picked up Mia after her first full week of football. I hadn't been alone with her since my parents and I left for California. I couldn't wait to spend some time with her. Mia seemed happy to see me, just a little reserved. Probably because we'd been apart, I thought. We drove around town and chatted about my holiday and going back to school. Everything was pretty innocent. After I dropped her off at home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Maybe we'd just been apart too long. Maybe we needed to regroup a little, I thought. I spent the next week calling her and trying to fix our relationship. But something was still off. I asked her what was wrong. "I've just been busy, back at school and everything," she replied. "My mom is driving me crazy," she added. "I see," I said, still feeling like something else had happened. "So, are we still going on Saturday night?" I asked, trying to confirm our date. "I don't know," she replied. "Probably. I'll let you know." That was the end of the conversation. Before I could ask her any more questions, she apologized and hung up. We definitely weren't back to normal. On Saturday morning, there was still no word from Mia. I called once, but no one answered. I decided to go straight to her house at the usual time. Her mother opened the door. I had always gotten along well with Mrs. Battle. She looked at me with a puzzled expression. "Max?" she asked. "Hello, Mrs. Battle," I replied. "Mia isn't home, Max," she told me. There was a look of confusion on her face, as if she wanted to say something to me but thought better of it. "I'll let Mia know you stopped by." With that, she closed the door. I didn't miss the look of sympathy on her face as the door closed. During our relationship with Mia, We had always been able to communicate well. If I wrote to her, she would reply quickly. When we talked about problems, difficulties, minor annoyances, and the like, we always discussed them. But now everything was different. She was shutting me out. I sat in the car for a few minutes. Mia, whom I knew and had grown so close to, couldn't be doing this to me. We had talked about the future. We had discussed our plans for college. In some cases, we had even talked about a future together after college. About careers, a house, marriage, and even children. Something was clearly changing. I just didn't know what. In the end, I drove home. I was numb. I told myself I wouldn't call her again and again. As much as I wanted to know what was going on, I wasn't going to be a pathetic, desperate guy who sacrificed his masculinity. I told myself I wouldn't contact her until she called me first. I thought about all her actions, her signs, her unspoken feelings. Unfortunately, the logical conclusion was that we had broken up. She just didn't have the decency to say so officially. Friday was our first football game against Roosevelt. During practice that week, I was in a fog. I couldn't concentrate, I wasn't playing aggressively, and I was on the verge of being benched. Somehow, I mustered the strength to continue playing, but it was difficult. We won the game, but by a much smaller margin than we should have. Roosevelt wasn't very good. I definitely didn't play well. I was supposed to be the brains of the defense. My poor play contributed to a very tense game. Over the next week, I received minimal messages from Mia. I was tired of questions like, "What's going on? Are you upset?" etc. I promised myself that I wouldn't whine and beg her to talk to me. She just insisted that she was busy. The following week, we lost our football game to Regis. We were supposed to beat them by 2 touchdowns. After all, we had beaten them 34-10 last year. No matter how I analyzed the game, my poor play was the reason we lost. Our next opponent was St. Cecilia's. The St. Cecilia Crusaders were a well-known athletic powerhouse. It was a private school, and they recruited talented players. Our team, Washington, was kind of a rival of the Crusaders. I wondered if Mia would be at the game. Over the past week, we had barely spoken to each other. We started the game and they scored almost immediately. But at the end of the first quarter, we were tied 7-7. Their offense was led by the league's best quarterback, Gabriel Dante. Their running back was Michael Ameche, the same guy I got into a fight with at the Christmas party. Ameche was a muscular, straightforward runner. The Crusaders scored early in the second quarter. Our offense was powerless against the Crusaders' tough defense. The quarter was coming to an end, and the Crusaders were ahead. The first touchdown was scored on our 9-yard line. We all thought Dante would pass, but instead, Ameche tied the score. Tanner was double-teamed, so he was offside. I saw Ameche's pass. After a moment's hesitation, I moved to fill the gap. Ameche bowed his head when our eyes met and ran right through me, scoring a touchdown. As I lay on the grass, a jubilant Ameche ran up to me, stood over me, and scattered the rubbish. "Hey, tough guy," he muttered. "Not so tough now, nice tackle. I'm sure Mia enjoyed the game, huh? Tough guy?" he added with a laugh as his teammates surrounded him. Mia, I thought. What does this have to do with Mia? It was halftime in the locker room, and we were losing 21-7. Tanner stood up and addressed the team. "We played like shit in the first half," he proclaimed. "We're better than this. This team is not that bad. Focus and we'll win," he continued. "Don't let this team outplay us." And with that, he looked straight at me. I lowered my head, unable to look him in the eye. It was clear. Ameche had literally run me over. As we were about to leave the locker room to start the second half, Tanner grabbed me and pulled me aside. "Max, get your head out of your ass and focus," he said to me. I started nodding passively in agreement. This time he pushed me against the lockers and looked me straight in the eye. "You know Mia went back to Amech," Tanner said to me. "He wants to humiliate you in front of her. Now you have a choice. You can be in love and feel sorry for yourself. Or you can show Ameche that he's just a football player. Max, you're the smartest guy I know. Focus, for God's sake," he said to me. And with that, he joined the team on the field. His words stuck in my head. I stumbled when Mia turned to Michael Ameche. Ameche ran straight at me and taunted me. And I just felt sorry for myself. When I ran onto the field in the second half, a new feeling awakened in me. It was anger. Anger at myself and the Crusaders, at Ameche, but most of all at Mia. Early in the second half, we scored a goal right away, and then it seemed like neither team could continue their attack. About halfway through the third quarter, I noticed that the Crusaders were lined up in an unusual formation. I remembered it from the video recording of the game. I quickly told Nat, our cornerback, to go one-on-one with Perkins, their wide receiver. "I'll cover him," I told him. He looked at me with wide eyes and nodded. When Perkins and Nat ran past me, I accelerated and moved towards the flat area. And just like in the video, Ameche came out onto the flat surface. Dante's pass was a little high, and Ameche had to jump a little, but he caught the ball. Meanwhile, I was quickly approaching him from my position as a free defender. Everything around me slowed down, even though I was moving at full speed. I saw Ameche jump and follow the ball, trying to catch it. My instinct told me to hit lower. The last time I kicked higher, the ball flew over my head. I wasn't going to make that mistake again. I saw that his left foot was firmly planted on the grass, and I shifted my entire weight onto that leg, holding it in place for a moment. I lunged at that left leg at full speed. It didn't stand a chance. The first sound I heard was the crack of breaking bone and the crunch of cartilage, followed by Amachi's scream. Amachi lost his balance, and I quickly picked up the ball and ran 57 yards to the touchdown. As I ran to my teammates, I looked back at the St. Cecilia stands. I saw dark-haired Mia looking at me with tears in her eyes. Unable to hold back, I smiled at her. Amechi was carried off the field on a stretcher. It was as if the life had been sucked out of St. Cecilia. The final score was 35-24 in favor of Washington. As we lined up to shake hands, there were a few angry comments. Last in line was a guy I knew as Amechi's friend. I couldn't help myself. I was still very angry. "Hey, Jordan," I turned to Amechi's friend. "Tell Michael I hope he gets better soon," I said with obvious insincerity. "Go to hell, you bastard," was all the guy said. Despite my bravado during the game, I was deeply hurt by Mia's betrayal. I had a terrible feeling that it would be a long time before things got better. They say the opposite of love is indifference, but not for me. For me, it was hatred. School flew by, as did 4 years of college. I had always planned to work with my father at an insurance company. I majored in finance. Many of my friends and classmates changed their majors in college. I, on the other hand, knew what I wanted to do, and that gave me a certain satisfaction. I didn't have any serious relationships in high school or college. My experience with Mia left a scar on my soul. I was betrayed. I put so much emotion and energy into our relationship, and she cheated on me. She didn't even bother to break up with me properly. I learned not to trust women. I never talked to her to find out what happened. Tanner mentioned in passing that she and Amache had started dating over the summer, and that their relationship had progressed since then. I couldn't understand it. Maybe that's why I didn't have a serious relationship with anyone in college. I was afraid of the pain of betrayal. My only consolation was knowing that I had completely ruined Michael Amache's chances of playing university football. To be fair, I did see him once, and he was limping. Fair enough. Speaking of college football, Tanner got a scholarship to attend a small college in Texas. We didn't talk much in college, but when we did, it was like old times. Tanner decided to major in construction management. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in finance and dove headfirst into my work. My father had a solid business, and I began to interact with some of his clients. I was hardworking, sincere, and tried to be myself. I saw a very bright future for myself at John Early Insurance. But then tragedy struck our family. At just under 60 years old, Aunt Helen passed away quietly. In her sleep one April night, her heart gave out. It was a sad time for us. We weren't a big family. On holidays and special occasions, it was usually just my mom, dad, Aunt Helen, and me. Now, we missed her unique personality, which we all loved. A few weeks after her death, my dad and I met with Helen's solicitor. For some reason, my dad insisted that I accompany him to the meeting. Helen had a small investment account that she left to my father, but the surprise in her will was that her house and all 9.7 acres of prime real estate went to me. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. As we left the solicitor's office, my father put his arm around my shoulders and said, "Remember how you once told me that Aunt Helen never paid you for all your help?" he asked. I nodded affirmatively. "Well, son, I think you've just been paid," he said to me. I had inherited not only the house and land, but all of Aunt Helen's possessions. Now I saw the house from a completely different perspective. It had always been Aunt Helen's house, with its flowered curtains, cupboards filled with china and lace doilies. Now it was mine. It was far from a bachelor pad. I had a job. Between owning the house and working at the insurance company, I was very busy. At work, I noticed that my father was continuing to do what he had been doing for the past 25 years. Times were changing rapidly in the financial products industry, and although my father would most likely continue to serve his clients until he retired, we had to be prepared for change if we wanted our business to thrive and grow. One of the first things I did was take a good look at our office. It was outdated. There were old, wide beige blinds on the windows. On the glass front door hung a small cardboard clock with moving hands to signal when we were back. Just like in the 1960s, I thought that one of the important things to do was to make a favorable first impression. The landscaping in front of the front door was very outdated. A large area was overgrown with bark and the pavement was covered with cracks. The porch had outdated wooden railings. On either side of the front door were two bright brass lanterns in a colonial style. None of them were pointing straight up. It all looked old-fashioned and cheap. That was the first thing I had to do to revamp the business. We needed to create a different first impression. I called several landscape architects to come take a look, give their thoughts, and propose a design. To my surprise, when the second of three representatives from the landscaping firm arrived for the first meeting, I saw that it was Anne Dubois, Mia's school friend. At first, I froze when I saw her. All of Mia's negative memories flashed through my mind. I immediately felt uncomfortable. I felt myself blushing when we came face to face. "Max, my goodness," she said. "Is it really you?" she asked with genuine warmth. Ignoring my outstretched hand, she hugged me very warmly. I immediately began to relax. I remembered the kindness Anna had shown me when we were teenagers. "How are you?" she asked. "You look great, so it's not your business." She bombarded me with questions. We spent a few minutes catching up on what was new in our lives. She had graduated with a degree in architecture and was pursuing a master's degree in landscape architecture. She had an apartment in the city and was working as a designer at GL2 Architecture. I briefly told her about my work, but quickly turned the conversation to our office and some of my ideas for what I wanted to do with the entrance. Anna seemed a little surprised that I got down to business so quickly. She asked a few questions, took some notes, and said she would have some preliminary sketches ready by Friday. "It was so nice to see you, Max," she said with a big smile. "I'll call you at the end of the week," she continued. Another quick hug, and she was gone. Anna looked even better than she did in school. Same beautiful face, same beautiful body, I thought. Careful, I told myself, because the memories of my experience with Mia weren't that fresh anymore, but they were still strong. The first architect came with a huge estimate, and I crossed him off the list. The third one rescheduled the meeting. I hoped Anna had a good plan that would fit our budget. On Thursday afternoon, she called. "I have a couple of ideas for your entrance," Anna said. "Great," I replied. "I can't wait to see them." "Would you like to meet tomorrow for lunch?" she asked. "We can meet at the Bluebird at whatever time is convenient for you," she suggested. I hesitated. I know it's a business meeting, but to me it felt like a date. And it's not that I don't go on dates. It's just that her connection to Mia seemed too close for comfort. I think she sensed my hesitation and quickly interjected. "Or I can come to your office if you'd like," she offered. "No," I replied. "I can have lunch tomorrow, say at 12:30, I asked. She agreed to that time, and we went to lunch. That evening, I had mixed feelings. My anger towards Mia has not subsided to this day. For some reason, Anna became associated with that anger in my mind. Another thought was related to the hope that her design would be acceptable and fit our budget. And one last thought. Anna was beautiful, and I enjoyed her company. Alarm bells rang. When we met at Bluebird Bistro, she looked even better. It seemed like she had taken the time to look her best. I'm sure her appearance helped GL2 close the deal. Again, warm hugs and greeting. We skipped the small talk and got down to her projects. The first idea was good, pretty simple. The second one was a bit Asian-inspired. I liked it. Now for the cost. The first option was a bit under budget, but the Asian design was $10,000 over our maximum budget. I told her I'd think about it. At that moment, our food arrived, and we started talking, but not about business. She asked where I lived, and I told her the story about Aunt Helen and my inheritance. She seemed genuinely interested in my life. She knew about the piece of land. Later, she asked about my plans for the weekend. On weekends, I work on my house or yard depending on the weather, I replied. When the weather is nice like this weekend, I spend most of Saturday and Sunday outside. I love gardens and plants, she said. It must be nice to have so much land. I've told you many times about working on my plot, I said, but I've never called it entertainment. And with a smile, I added, well, I'd love to see it. Maybe someday I'll surprise you and drop by, she said. The next day, Saturday, as I had promised Anne, I spent the whole day working in the garden. There was a lot to do. Aunt Helen had laid out a formal English garden over most of the plot. Sculptural hedges, rose gardens, carefully planned plantings. I wasn't sure I liked it, but Aunt Helen's style seemed too old-fashioned to me. It must have been around noon when I noticed dust on the driveway, signaling the arrival of guests. It was probably Mum or Dad, but I knew they had left town. To my surprise, it was Anna. I immediately looked around, unshaven, dirty, sweaty, and shirtless. I greeted her and immediately reached for my shirt. You didn't have to put that on, she said. I was just admiring the view, she added with a laugh. I looked at her, trying to figure out what she meant. The first thought that crossed my mind was, wow, she's really working hard to get that landscaping contract. I dismissed the thought and politely showed her around the property. She seemed genuinely interested. I showed her what needed to be done, and she offered some advice that seemed good to me. So what are you working on? She asked. I told her, and without hesitation, she started helping me with my current task. I was grateful for her help, but I couldn't help wondering about her motivation. She seemed to be doing everything she could to get the contract. We worked side by side for several hours. The atmosphere was very comfortable. I must admit that I enjoyed her company. Towards the end of the day, she said it was time for me to leave, but lingered as if waiting for some kind of invitation from me. I thanked her, showed her to the restroom so she could freshen up, and she left somewhat reluctantly. All evening, I could only think about Anna. She was beautiful and sweet, but she had once been Mia's friend. That was a huge turnoff for me. That week, we discussed a landscaping proposal. I told her that we liked the Asian-style design better, but it was over budget. I hinted that we had other proposals, but we didn't. By the end of the week, she came back with a few changes to the original design and a new price that was only £2,000 over budget. We came to an agreement. She said they could start work in 3 weeks. We need to celebrate, she said. Ha ha ha, I smiled without amusement. Have a nice weekend, I told her. She looked a little disappointed that I didn't support the idea of a celebration. It was another warm weekend, and I was working on my plot. On Saturday afternoon, Anna showed up again, this time with a picnic basket. Can you put this in the house? She asked, handing me the basket. So what are we going to work on? I told her, and she got to work. At the end of the day, she asked me to bring the picnic basket and a corkscrew. She spread a blanket on the ground. She prepared a mini dinner and brought a bottle of Oregon Pinot Noir. We had a pleasant evening, and I really enjoyed talking to her. It seemed we had a lot in common. I also began to think that since we had already signed a contract with GL2, her firm, there was no point in continuing to be nice if that was the only goal. Over the next few weeks, we continued to see each other. She would either stop by the office to get information about our design project or come over on the weekends to help me around the house. We continued to see each other, and our friendship grew stronger. However, there was nothing romantic yet. She didn't make any moves, and although part of me wanted to, I still felt the nagging reminder of Mia's betrayal warning me that I could get hurt. It was Friday evening. I left the office around 6 o'clock. I went home and ran 5 miles. As I was thinking about dinner, my mobile phone rang. It was Anna. Hi, Anna, I said. I could hear loud voices and music in the background. When she didn't answer, I asked, Hello? Do you have a girlfriend? Anna replied in a barely audible voice. Huh? I replied. At that moment, I heard rustling. Then, another voice in the background, and then the phone. Hi, Max. My name is Lindsay. I'm Anna's friend, she said. She's had a little too much to drink and said she's coming over to your place, but she shouldn't drive. Can you pick her up at Palantino's? She asked. I said I could. I quickly tidied myself up and headed downtown. Palantino's is a very nice restaurant and bar. Too nice to be a pickup bar, more like a date spot. I found them and met Lindsay. She was quite attractive, but Anna was there. In my eyes, she was a goddess. There was no comparison. Anna was a little drunk and apologized for calling. I ordered a beer, and Lindsay quickly left. Only Anna and I remained. After only a few minutes at Palantino's, she asked me, "Can we go to your place?" I agreed, and we left. We pulled up to the house, and I mentally assessed its condition. I knew it still looked like the home of an elderly woman living alone. I hadn't had time to do anything inside yet. All my energy was focused on the exterior. Anna didn't seem to notice. I had no idea where this conversation was going. Anna, slightly tipsy, asked if I liked her, and I said of course. She asked if I had a girlfriend, and I said no. "I don't want to sound conceited," she said, "but guys usually like me. But I don't think you're like that." I assured her that she was very attractive. Then she asked why I hadn't asked her out yet. I took a deep breath and told her about my insecurity in my relationship with Mia in high school. We talked about it for a while, and then she brought up Tanner. "I know he's your friend and he can be fun," she said, "but he can also be a jerk. I've learned to stay away from egocentric guys like that. I'm much better off with a different type of man." With that, she looked me straight in the eye. There was a moment of silence and my mind raced. Everything was fine, I hoped. At that moment, she excused herself and went to the bathroom. I sat there thinking, wondering what to do next. I shouldn't have worried. The next step became obvious when she returned. We made love. Thus began a new phase in our relationship. I felt that my life was moving in the right direction on several fronts. Things were going well. I was trying to transform our business without disrupting or changing all the positive things that had made my father successful. My home was also undergoing a transformation. Anna loved working there. She especially loved gardening, planting, landscaping, and designing open spaces. She begged me many times never to sell this valuable and unique piece of land that she was transforming. And of course, my relationship with Anna was wonderful. The faint voices of doubt turned into a rare whisper. Anna continued to assure me of her love. There was one thing I had been putting off, but I knew I had to do it. I needed to call Tanner. I had to tell him about my relationship with Anna. I knew it had been almost 9 years since they had been together, but there was some vague male code that we were supposed to follow to some extent. I was dating his ex-girlfriend. As far as I knew, there was no statute of limitations. I had to call him. Tanner lived in Texas. He worked for a large real estate company on the outskirts of Houston. From our infrequent conversations, I gathered that he was doing well. He claimed he liked Texas, but at some point he wouldn't mind moving back to the Northwest. I called. After a few minutes, I got to the point. "Tanner," I began, "I wanted to talk to you about something." There was a pause, and he didn't say anything. "I wanted to tell you that I'm in a relationship with Anna," I said. "Dubois?" he exclaimed after a pause. There was disbelief in his voice. "Yes, Anna from St. Cecilia's," I replied. At first there was silence on the line, and then I heard Tanner start to giggle. "Well, congratulations," he said. "She's a wonderful girl. I'm proud of you. I know you've been afraid of women for a long time." He continued. We talked for a few more minutes, and his casual attitude toward my relationship with Anna dispelled all my fears. When we finished talking, he said, "I have to get up. I'll come visit you soon." Visit? It seemed like Tanner was starting to love Texas. Months passed, and our relationship seemed to continue to grow. Anna took up gardening and landscaping at my house. We worked side by side to change the entire atmosphere of the place. We were a team working together. I'd been thinking about proposing, and discussing it with Tanner seemed to remove one of the obstacles. Now that everything was in place, I had no doubts. My trust issues were virtually gone. Anna's assurances that she had feelings for me removed the last remnants of my insecurity. I started looking for a ring. One of the side effects of a job like insurance is that you meet a lot of people, and you also have to sell yourself to those people. I always enjoyed it when I really liked someone I was dealing with. One of my new friends/clients was a little older than me, and his name was Greg Boston. I first met Greg when he was a client of mine. He was building a shed for me on my property. One evening, after he finished work, we had a beer and started talking. I told him about my business, and he ended up becoming a client. But more importantly, he became a good friend. Greg moved from small repair jobs like the ones he did for me to building houses. In our neighborhood, the key to success as a builder was having land to build on. Greg would always ask me in a friendly way if I wanted to sell my land. I politely declined. Finally, I made an offer, and a happy, delighted Anna accepted. Now we had to start planning the wedding. Anna and her mother did most of the work. I'd become such good friends with Greg that I asked him to be my best man. I asked Tanner to be my best man. One day, while preparing for the wedding, Anna and I were walking around the barn that Greg had built. She turned to me with a serious expression on her face. "Max, I need to talk to you," she said. "Oh no, what now?" I nodded silently. "It's about the guest list, and Mia," she said. I was relieved. I thought it was something serious. "I have to invite Mia and her husband," she said. "I've known Mia almost my whole life. She won't be a bridesmaid or anything like that, just a guest." She looked at me intently. I thought for a moment. I knew Anna was still friends with Mia, if not more. I also knew that Mia had married that jerk Michael Amiche. And I also knew that their friendship had faded mainly because Anna knew how much I disliked Mia. I discovered something else. When Anna didn't want to answer a question, she answered with a question. I first suspected this when she went out with her friends one evening. When she came home, I asked her who she had been with. "Why do you need to know?" she replied. I suspected that Mia was with a group of friends. I didn't think much of it because I knew she was trying to protect me. But this trait of hers deserved attention. I paused and said, "Of course she's your old friend. I understand that she needs to be there for you." I took the high ground. "Thanks," she said. The wedding was beautiful. We held it on our property. The gardens and park looked fantastic. Anna did a great job with the landscaping and was proud of her work. The wedding gave her a chance to show off how she had transformed everything around her. Among the guests were a few people who deserve mention. First, Tanner, my good friend from school and Anna's ex-boyfriend. Tanner's outgoing personality quickly dispelled any awkwardness associated with Anna and Tanner's long-standing friendship. Speaking of character, despite wearing a tuxedo, Tanner's Texas influence was evident. Along with the tuxedo, he wore a cowboy hat and black cowboy boots. I lost count of how many times he said "y'all," but he pulled it off. I had forgotten how funny Tanner could be. He also brought a girl with him, a stunning blonde with a European accent. Her name was Greta St. Kitts. She was gorgeous. And even though I thought my Anna was beautiful, I didn't want to say it, but next to Greta, she looked a little washed out. And then I realized I had to say hello to Mia and Michael. I had avoided any contact or conversation about them since high school. "Congratulations, mate," Ameche said, holding out his hand. "Thanks, Michael," I said, shaking his hand. Mia came over to hug me. I quickly held out my hand to greet her. She hesitated for a moment, then shook my hand. "You look beautiful, Mia," I said in greeting. She looked at me as if confused and unsure of my sincerity. She opened her mouth to say something, looked around, and fell silent. "What do you do?" Ameche asked me. I briefly told him about my insurance company, then felt obligated to answer the question. That was a mistake. Ameche spent almost 15 minutes talking about his job and how good he was at it. He worked in property management for a company I had heard of, Winegrass Properties. I remembered his friendship with Jordan Winegrass from school. The company had a dubious reputation as a slumlord that used unethical methods to acquire property at best. Michael never mentioned it. The company was owned by Jordan's father, Sidney. "Stop by sometime," Ameche said. "Maybe you can save us some money on insurance." And he handed me his business card. I nodded in agreement, knowing full well that I wanted nothing to do with either Ameche or Winegrass. Another guest I should mention is our secretary at the insurance company, Yasmin Reynosa. She was wonderful, hardworking, with a slight accent and just over 5 feet tall. She worked for us for almost 2 years and became an indispensable member of the team. I had never met her husband, only seen him a couple of times when he picked her up after work and waved to him. But that was all. Yasmin introduced me to her husband, Angel. If I had to judge by his appearance, I would say that Angel Reynosa was probably a gang member. His arms and neck were covered in tattoos. He also looked tough. But the conversation was very polite. "Where are you going on your honeymoon?" Angel asked. Angel asked. Angel asked. Angel asked. I told him we were going to Hawaii. He seemed genuinely interested and started asking me about the trip. I told him a little about where we were going and what we would be doing. While we were talking, he hugged the petite Yasmin. "Someday, little girl," he said to Yasmin, "I'll take you there." He said it with such sincerity that I was touched. The rest of the wedding went off without a hitch. We had a great time and the guests seemed to enjoy themselves as well. As I told Reynos, we spent our honeymoon in Hawaii and had a wonderful time. It was all over and we returned to our normal lives, only now I was married. Our family life was wonderful. We both worked full time. We developed a small plan to renovate the house and tidy up the surrounding area. Anna seemed more motivated than I was to tackle the work that needed to be done while we were renovating Aunt Helen's old house. After the wedding, the photographer we hired asked to come by and take some pictures of the property. He was impressed. He explained that they were writing an article for the Sunday paper and were looking for unique landscapes. Anna was thrilled, plus it was free advertising for her and her landscape architecture firm, GL2. Anna spent every spare moment before the photo shoot working in the garden. When the photo shoot was published in the Sunday newspaper, Anna appeared in 2 photos. I think one of the reasons she was featured was because she was so photogenic. In addition, she was quoted several times in the article. She seemed to be a natural media expert. Another event occurred in our lives about a year after the wedding. Tanner returned to us. He told me how successful he had been in Texas working for a large firm. He decided he could use his experience in the Pacific Northwest and start his own company. He named it Texas Pacific. Tanner rented an expensive office in the city center. He hired an attractive secretary. He furnished the office to perfection. He once told me, "To be successful, you have to look successful." I agreed with him to a certain extent, but Tanner was on the verge of being outrageous. Tanner became part of Anna's and my life. Tanner was lonely. The glamorous Greta St. Kitts and Tanner were no longer together. I had moments of jealousy, but overall, I was happy that Tanner, Anna, and I were together. I also became Tanner's insurance agent. I insured his personal property as well as his business. Tanner was classified as a demanding client. I was constantly calling him because insurance premiums had to be paid. Several times I had to drive to his office and ask him to write me a check so I could make sure he was insured. I had to keep track of everything all the time. It wasn't part of my job, but I did it for Tanner. If you miss one payment, the insurance is canceled. One evening, Anna, Tanner, and I were sitting at our house drinking wine and talking about our professional and life goals. I said, "I like helping people make the right financial choices in their lives. I don't think I'll ever get rich, but I love my job and I love seeing the people I've helped succeed. I'm happy with my quiet life." After a pause, Anna said, "Someday I want to start my own landscaping company. I want to be known in the community. I want my work to be seen and talked about. I guess I want to be famous in some way." She laughed a little when she said that, but I knew she was serious. A few minutes later, Tanner spoke up. "I'm a little different from both of you," he said, and he spoke very sincerely, which was unusual for him. "I want to make enough money so that I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. I want to be very successful. I want to know that I can walk away from the business at any time and it won't affect my lifestyle. That's what I want." I looked at Tanner silently, and even though we were good friends, I realized how different we were. Months passed and months turned into years. I often thought back to that impromptu conversation about goals that took place between me, Tanner, and Anna on that June evening. I felt that although my goals weren't as lofty, I was achieving them. Things were going well at the insurance company. My father was working 20 to 30 hours a week. He would arrive in the morning around 9 with the newspaper. I continued to attract new clients and constantly came up with ideas to expand the business. Anna was also working towards her goals. Less than a year ago, she left GL2 and started her own business. With the help of my friend Greg Boston, the barn was converted into a fully functional office. The shed stands among the many garden structures she has built on my property. It has become a great place for Anna and her business where she can showcase her landscaping skills. She has secured several contracts to landscape our backyard while one of our clients was walking around the property. That left Tanner. As far as I could tell, Tanner was doing well. He was always active and constantly working on some project or design. From our business relationship, I knew that his cash flow was sometimes quite unstable. As I said, I had to constantly remind him about his bonus payments. I wouldn't call him disorganized, just heavily in debt. But I knew what he was aiming for. He wanted to make it big. One evening in mid-May, he called me and suggested we meet for a drink. He wanted to talk to me about something. "Let's meet at Evergreen around 6 p.m., he said. Evergreen was a nice bar and restaurant geared towards young partygoers. Not my choice, but no big deal. Max, how's it going? He hugged me in greeting and we sat down. I knew Tanner well enough to know that he was in aggressive sales mode. I knew he wanted something. I just didn't know what yet. I may have the deal of a lifetime, he began, rubbing his hands together. It's a little complicated, but the outcome is guaranteed. I wanted to give you a chance to be part of it, Max, he told me. I had no doubt that Tanner considered me a good friend, but I had spent enough time with him to know that participating in this deal was not proof of our friendship. He wanted something from me. Tanner told me that he had the right to purchase a valuable piece of land on the island of Kauai in Hawaii. The owner, the widow of one of the executives at the firm where he worked in Texas, was planning to sell it. Tanner had become friends with her and always said that if she ever wanted to sell the property, she should talk to him first. He seemed to have charmed the elderly widow. Now she was offering the land to Tanner. She wants $1 million for it, he told me excitedly. It should be worth 2 or 3 times that. It's on a beautiful sandy beach. When we build something, we'll get at least $5 million for a beach house, he explained. He took out a folder and showed me photos of the empty lot, overgrown with bushes and palm trees. In the background, the blue-green sea sparkled. I realized how special this place was. I can take out a few loans and scrape together $500,000 from my savings, Tanner told me. If you put in $500,000, we can buy the plot together. I'll create high-quality marketing materials to sell the property. We'll sell the beachfront lots, and in a year, your money will double. 1.5 years at most, he continued. His eyes followed my reaction. His enthusiasm was somewhat contagious. I leaned back in my chair and thought about it. While I was considering his offer, he continued to add convincing comments. Tanner, I began. Wow, you've caught me off guard. It's a really beautiful property, but $500,000 is a lot of money. I can't come up with that kind of money right away. I'd need a large secured loan. All the while, he nodded his head, trying to convey his excitement to me. He talked about the deal, the property, and the profits for a few more minutes. Finally, I told him I needed to talk to Anna and think it over. The rest of the evening, Tanner was on edge. He was excited about everything. He was in serious sales mode. Max, he exclaimed, you're my best friend. We've known each other for a long time. I sincerely believe this will be good for us, he told me. I said I would get back to him tomorrow, but it was funny that the more he tried to convince me, the more I dreaded going into partnership with Tanner. Later that evening, I told Anna about Tanner's offer. She was interested in it. At least she was more interested in the opportunity than I was. I, on the other hand, had mixed feelings, and the more I thought about it, the less I liked it. I decided to sleep on it. By mid-morning, I had decided to decline the real estate investment offer for many reasons. The 2 main reasons were that I was too conservative in my investment outlook and that I was afraid that it might damage my friendship with Tanner in the long run if problems arose. I wrote to Tanner and asked if he would agree to meet for lunch. He agreed. I knew he would be disappointed when I turned him down, but I wasn't prepared for his reaction. He was angry. Exactly, he said to me. How can you turn down £500,000 in profit? The friendliness was long gone. Now he doubted my intelligence and common sense. Finally, he played his last card. He questioned our friendship. When I tried to explain how the deal would affect our friendship, he dismissed my arguments. The more annoyed he became at my refusal to join his deal, the more certain I was that I had made the right decision. Tanner, I finally said to him, if this is such a lucrative deal as you describe, I'm sure there are many who would want to partner with you. He just stared at me. I could see that my words had angered him, but I didn't understand why. Even Anna thinks it's a good deal, he said. Anna? I asked. You talked to Anna about this? I asked. Since when did he start talking to Anna about things like this? An emotion flashed through my mind that I thought I had long since gotten rid of. Jealousy. He tried to explain that he needed her ideas for landscaping the proposed site. Ha, I thought. I'll have to listen to Anna. When we left the house, he wasn't as enthusiastic as he had been the night before. Now there was a small gap between us. I was curious to see how things would unfold. Weeks passed. Anna told me that she had talked to Tanner about the plot, and he had asked her about tropical landscaping. She was eager to share her ideas for the project with him. She said she hadn't worked with tropical design before, but she was interested in it. She said she thought investing in the land was a good deal, but she also understood why I had declined. Gradually, over the course of several weeks, my friendship with Tanner was somewhat restored. We were doing business together, and we needed to talk. I never asked him about the project, but it seemed to me that he was somehow pushing the plan forward. One day, I stopped by his office to pick up another, almost overdue bonus check. I saw a glossy brochure with a photo of a magnificent tropical home. I immediately recognized it as a beautiful oceanfront property on Kauai. As I was looking at it, Tanner came out of his office. He told me he had an interested buyer for the house. He said he had personally raised the money, secured a loan, and purchased the land on Kauai. He said he was almost finished building a large country-style cedar home on a large plot of land in a wine-growing region. Once he finished the work, he would temporarily move to Kauai to begin construction on the estate in about a month. I asked about the deal to sell the estate on Kauai. It's going to sell for $5.5 million, he told me. Wow, $5.5 million, I exclaimed. Who's the buyer? I asked. A local guy, actually, Tanner said. Do you know Sidney Wainwright? Yes, I knew who Sidney Wainwright was. He employed that jerk Michael Amici. He didn't have a very good reputation, but I assumed he was rich. Tanner, I said, be careful in your dealings with Winegrass. I've heard some not-so-nice things about him and his business. Max, Tanner said, don't worry, I know Sid. We've done business together. He's a great guy. Tanner dismissed my concerns. A few days later, Anna came in and said she had a new client, Tanner. She explained that she would be designing a beach house he was building on Kauai. I'm so excited, she said. I've always wanted to work on a tropical project. What will you need? I asked. Most of the work will be done in my office, but I was hoping that in October, when I need to be there, we could go on a second honeymoon. And it would be tax deductible, she told me. It actually sounded wonderful, especially in March in the Pacific Northwest, when rain, wind, and cold seem like a normal part of life. A warm tropical holiday sounds wonderful. And I would love to see that house. Besides, I felt like it would be good for our relationship. It would spice things up. A week later, Anna burst in with more potentially good news. One of the local TV stations, KPL, wanted to add a weekly gardening show to its schedule and wanted to talk to Anna about hosting it. Life seemed to be looking up for both Anna and me. Everything was fine, although I was beginning to feel that our connection wasn't as strong as it had been. I attributed this to the fact that we were both very busy. One evening, Tanner, Anna, and I went for a walk. Tanner was due to fly to Kauai in the next few days. We discussed our second honeymoon working holiday in October, when we planned to visit Tanner's workplace. Tanner talked a little about the finances involved in buying the land and building a beach house on Kauai. It was complicated and I couldn't figure out how legal it all was. It seemed to me that he was mixing money. Money that was supposed to be used to finish the house in the wine country might have gone to pay for part of the property on Kauai. It was complicated and, to put it mildly, unethical. I've got it all worked out, he told us. When we close on the Kauai property, I should come out with almost $4 million after taxes. He smiled and leaned back in his chair. I hoped he would succeed, but I doubted it. After listening to him, I had no doubts about my decision not to enter into a real estate partnership with him. As we parted ways with Tanner and drove home, I expressed some of my concerns about Tanner's risky deal. Can't you just be happy for him? Anna said. Just because he's taking a bigger risk than you doesn't mean he's doing the wrong thing, she told me. I didn't respond. I was surprised by her defense of Tanner. A few months later, Anna was invited to interview for a local television station, KPL, which was looking for a gardener to host a weekly program on Fridays. The idea was that local garden centers would sponsor the program and encourage homeowners to plan garden projects for the upcoming weekend. She was nervous and excited. Anna looked gorgeous and was photogenic, which worked in her favor. Plus, she had beautiful gardens on my property that she had created to serve as the backdrop for her weekly gardening tips. She also had a shed office that could be converted into a makeshift studio. In early September, she was contacted by KPAL and offered a contract to host a weekly program called In the Garden with Anna, which was scheduled to begin in late November and run through the holidays, then resume in late winter. Anna was thrilled. Not only would she be getting a salary from KPL, but she would also get free advertising for her landscaping company, Distinctive Gardens. It was all great news. I felt that she had been working hard on her career lately and it was paying off. However, I couldn't help feeling that she was now paying less attention to us. We started discussing a trip to Kauai. Anna was corresponding with Tanner about a project on the ocean front in Kauai. Things seemed to be going well, but perhaps not as smoothly as Tanner had anticipated. I didn't know how often she spoke with Tanner, but I had peeked into her office a few times when she was talking to him, and what I heard didn't sound like a business conversation. It sounded more like small talk. We were supposed to leave on Friday and stay for the weekend, 8 days at the Sheraton on Kauai. I was looking forward to the break. I think we needed a good holiday to work on our relationship. My father and Yasmin would take care of everything while I was away. I knew Yasmin would be in good hands. 2 days before we were due to leave, there was an accident. My father had a heart attack. He was at home and felt a pain in his chest. My mother called me and called an ambulance. The ambulance took my father to St. Luke's Hospital. Anna and I met my mom at the hospital. My dad was conscious, but in a lot of pain. We stayed with him for a few minutes, then the nurse took us out of the room. Later, we met with a cardiologist who said that my dad would have to stay in the hospital for a few days and then rest at home. Anna and I understood what that meant. There was no way we could go to Kauai. Not only did I need to support my parents, but I also had to work at the office for a whole week. Anna said she would stay home too, but we both knew she needed to be there to supervise the renovation work. I was busy with my father. We both decided that it would be better for her to go and then try to come back as soon as possible. We would celebrate our second honeymoon another time. When I took Anna to the airport, my father was still in the hospital. I was preoccupied with my father's health and didn't think about Anna's trip. During the trip, I tried to focus on her. I told her how much I would miss her and asked her to rest and enjoy Hawaii. We said goodbye with hugs and kisses. She quickly disappeared into the long line for security at the airport. I promised to call her every day. I returned to my father's bedside. On Saturday, my father was discharged with strict instructions to stay in bed. The doctors were considering surgical options, including bypass surgery. My mother and I had to stay with him for the next week to monitor his recovery. My father always went to bed early and got up early. I told my mother that I would be at his bedside at 5 in the morning on Sunday so she could get some sleep. She let me leave around 9. On my way home, Tanner called. He asked how my father was doing and then asked me to stop by the construction site in wine country, where he was finishing a large cedar house. He needed to pick up something the inspector had left. I told him I would be with my father today but could stop by next week. He said any time this week was fine. I also reminded him that his insurance payment was due. Yes, I'll take care of it, he said. Typical. I'd have to stop by his office and pick up the check. While I was on the phone, I dreamed of being in Hawaii with Anna. I think it was the soft Hawaiian music playing in the background while I was talking to Tanner. It reminded me of our honeymoon. I associated Hawaiian music with the wonderful time we had there. I decided to call Anna. It took a few minutes before she answered sleepily. "Good morning," she said. Then I remembered that it was still early there. There was a 3-hour time difference between Hawaii and the West Coast. It was only 6 in the morning in Kauai. I forgot how early it was. Sorry, I said. No problem. How's your dad? She asked. We continued talking about my father and her trip. I really wanted to be with her. I imagined the balcony doors open, the warm breeze, the sound of the ocean, the tropical scent in the air, and the continuous, beautiful Hawaiian music. We were just talking, and I was about to discuss a couple more things with her when my mom called and I had to hang up. I'll call you later, I told her and switched to talking to my mom. I had lunch with my dad while my mom ran some errands. When she came back, she asked if I could take care of some chores while she looked after my dad. I agreed and thought about Anna in Kauai, wishing I could be there again. I remembered our short conversation and the sensual images of Hawaii. The beaches, the palm trees, the sunsets, the music. Music? I started thinking about music. I remembered the music that was playing in the background when I was talking to Anna, and I also remembered the same music when I was talking to Tanner. I was overcome by a flash of suspicious jealousy. I analyzed the facts. Tanner called me, and I heard Hawaiian music. A few minutes later, I called Anna. It was still early Sunday morning in Hawaii. It seemed like Anna had just woken up and was still in bed. I heard the same Hawaiian music. Were they together? And if so, what were they doing together at 6 in the morning on a Sunday? Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe Tanner was just staying at the same hotel as Anna, and the music was coming from the speakers? For a moment it seemed possible, and I calmed down. But then I thought about it. Tanner wouldn't have stayed at the Sheraton for £300 a night for months while he was working on his beach house. He would have found somewhere else to stay that was cheaper. Had Tanner spent the night with Anna? I decided to call Anna. I told her that my father was feeling better, and we chatted about trivial matters, nothing specific. Then I decided to ask her a few questions. I asked her about the project and asked a few general questions. "Did you meet with Tanner after work?" I asked innocently. She hesitated. "Why are you asking?" she replied. Oh dear. I knew that when she didn't want to answer a question, she would ask it again. I didn't say anything to her. I said casually. "Just asking," I added. "I saw him at the construction site," she told me. "That's all," she added. I tried to keep the conversation light, but alarm bells were ringing in my head. I had no definitive proof, but there were some clues that reinforced my suspicions. Later, I called Tanner, pretending to remind him about the overdue bonus. Yes, I know," he replied. "I'll get in touch with Bernadette in the morning." I tried not to bring up the sore subject, talking about trivial things as usual. Then I thanked him for looking after Anna while she was alone. "No problem," he replied. "I couldn't leave my friend's beautiful wife alone at night," he added. We talked a little longer, then I left. Something wasn't right. Anna told me she only saw Tanner at the construction site, but in the evenings, Tanner drove her to places she frequented? The stories didn't add up, but I had no concrete evidence that anything was going on. Just a lot of suspicious circumstances. I started to make a plan. I made a phone call and set up a meeting for tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. On Monday morning, I met with Yasmin and Angel Reynos at the office. I asked them to keep everything confidential. They agreed. I explained my concerns about Anna and Tanner. They didn't ask any questions, just listened. I asked if they could go to Kauai and conduct an informal investigation. I gave them a folder with photos of Tanner and Anna for identification. "When, Mr. Max?" Angel asked. "When do you want us to do this?" he asked. "Tomorrow," I replied. "I want you there by next Sunday. You'll be staying at the same hotel as Anna. Just keep an eye on her. If nothing happens, just enjoy the week," I explained. Angel and Yasmin agreed immediately. I told Yasmin that I would arrange everything and gave them $1,000 for expenses, excluding accommodation and airfare. I said I would take them to the airport in the morning, but not a word to anyone about why they were going. They agreed. As they were leaving the office, Angel stopped me. "Mr. Max," he said. "Thank you. If you ever need any help, call Angel," he told me. He looked me in the eye, shook my hand, and left. Maybe I'm paranoid, but Reynosa's words that Anna and Tanner were innocent of everything my overly jealous imagination had conjured up cost me several $1,000s. I continued to call Anna every day, but I never heard a hint from her that anything was wrong. I began to feel a little foolish for my paranoia and for sending Reynosa to spy on her. On Thursday afternoon, I decided to drive out to Tanner, who was almost finished with his project in wine country. He had asked me to pick up a document from the county office. As soon as I pulled up to the house, Yasmin called. I had asked them not to call unless it was important. I expected her to say that everything was fine, but it wasn't. "Max," she began, "Angel took some photos that you need to see," she told me. I asked her to tell me what they were, but she just repeated, "You'll see the photos." I heard my phone beep, signaling that I had received messages. I told her I would call her back. There were 4 photos. They showed my wife cheating on me. I was sitting on a 5-liter bucket in the garage of my house. I was stunned. My wife and my best friend, I couldn't believe it. After everything I had been through with Mia over the years, now it was happening again, but worse, much worse. I don't know how long I sat there, but it was over an hour, thinking about how the life I knew was ending. I didn't know what to do. Could I forgive her? Could I forgive him? The answers were no and no way. And then 2 things started to happen to me. First, anger began to grow in my head. White, hot anger. Second, my head started to spin from the oil paint that covered the cedar planks. In the corner of the garage, I saw a pile of oil-soaked rags. In one of my insurance classes, I had learned that oil-soaked rags can spontaneously combust. I headed towards them, but suddenly stopped. I carefully put on a pair of light gloves. I gathered all the rags, put them in a metal bucket and covered it with a lid. I poured some more oil paint into the bucket. I placed the stack of cedar boards next to the bucket. Then I turned on the heater next to the bucket with the oil-soaked rags. Then I stepped back. I took the document Tanner needed and left. Here, in the wine-growing region, there were no neighbors nearby. Besides, I had my own goal. If arson really did occur, who could accuse me? I remembered that we had already discussed spontaneous combustion. It occurs when oil-soaked rags or cloth slowly heat up to the ignition temperature as a result of oxidation. When a substance oxidizes, it begins to release heat. If this heat has nowhere to escape, for example in a pile, the temperature rises to a level sufficient to ignite the oil and set fire to the rag or cloth. The fire can quickly spread to other combustible materials and cause extensive damage. I sent Tanner a message saying I had the document. Later, I received a thank you in reply. I also started thinking about Tanner's insurance. It was about to expire. I had written to him about it several times earlier in the week. I couldn't drive over to his house to pick up the insurance. Technically, he no longer had fire insurance. I thought about Anna. I couldn't forgive her. She couldn't understand how much she had hurt me. I just wanted her to feel the same pain. A few minutes later, I had an idea. I called Greg Boston, my builder friend. We agreed to meet that evening. I told him it was very important and urgent. We met at a small restaurant. He looked at me and knew something was wrong. He asked what was wrong, but I waved him off. Greg, you've asked me several times about my land, I said, and he nodded. I want to sell it, but I have a few conditions, I told him. The most important thing is that I want the house and garden to be cleared and cleaned up within the next 3 days. When he heard this schedule, he almost choked. 3 days, he whispered. That's impossible, he told me. I replied that if it was impossible, I would find someone who could do it. Wait, Max, let me think about it, he said. After a while, he said that he thought he could do it, but it would be difficult. We discussed the price and one other important condition. We made a gentleman's agreement. We shook hands, and he said he would start work tomorrow. Max, as a friend, I have to ask you what's going on, he said. Greg, I said, we'll talk about it sometime, but today is not the day. He nodded, and we both left. That night, my phone rang on the nightstand. It was Tanner. I didn't answer. When I woke up, I had an urgent voicemail from Tanner asking me to call him back. I didn't rush. I scrolled through the morning news. Fire in Yamhill County, 4 alarms, wine country. No injuries, the house was empty, but it was completely destroyed. On the way, I called Tanner, and he answered in despair. Max, the house we were finishing is burned down, he said. I need money. When will we get compensation? He asked. Wait, I said. What house? I was becoming a real actor. He started talking about the house, about his finances, which were tied up in the house he was building for Winegrass on Kauai. He was panicking, jumping from one topic to another. I wasn't sure I could help him even if I wanted to. And I didn't want to. Tanner, I said calmly, let me go to the office and look into it. We'll talk later. Did you tell Bernadette to send the bonus check? I asked. What? He hissed. You didn't get it? I think I asked her. Is it important? He continued. I said I'd take care of it and hung up. He was still talking when I disconnected. I wasn't going to continue the conversation. Our friendship was over. Now I had to deal with Anna. Over the next few days, I called Anna and tried to act normal. I think she sensed that something was wrong, but she didn't say anything. I received a few more photos from Angel Reno. They only confirmed the previous ones. Tanner kept calling. Each voicemail sounded more desperate. Anna was due to return home on Monday, the day after tomorrow. I hadn't said anything to my parents yet. My dad didn't need any extra stress, and my mom needed to focus on my dad. Greg Boston had several pieces of heavy equipment, graders, excavators, tractors, which were preparing the land for construction. I delivered several capsules and placed all of Anna's personal and work belongings in one of them. I put my things in another. It felt so strange to drive up to my property. The horizon was completely different. No houses, no gardens. Anna's flight arrived around 6 o'clock on Monday evening. I picked her up and hugged her, But when she kissed me on the lips, I turned away and the kiss landed on her cheek. She gave me a questioning look. I ignored it and asked how her flight had been. On the way home, she realized something was wrong. We talked about the fire for a few minutes, but after a short conversation, I changed the subject. I wasn't a bad actor, but it was a betrayal I couldn't hide. I suggested we stop at a small bar on the way home. Max, I've been traveling for 6 hours. I just want to go home, she said. It'll only take a minute, I said and pulled into the bar. When we sat down at the table and ordered a drink, she looked at me with confusion. What was so important that we had to stop? She asked. I handed her the folder with the photos Angel had sent me. I had printed them out. When she opened them, she gasped. She looked from the photos to me and then back at the photos. Max, it's not what it looks like, she began. I've been seeing Tanner for a while, but it wasn't anything serious, she said. Oh, you have to believe me. I didn't show you one photo. It clearly shows what they were doing. There really wasn't anything, I asked. She was sobbing. She said how sorry she was. She said it got out of control. Tanner was aggressive and persuasive. He made her feel young. We can get through this. It will never happen again. And so on and so forth. I was waiting for this. Anna, I said, holding back my anger, I'm not sure you understand how much you hurt me. I hope that one day, and most likely very soon, you'll feel the same pain. Max, I'm so sorry, she sobbed. Can we just go home and try to work things out? She begged. Yes, I said. It's time to go home. And we drove home. I didn't say a word for the rest of the way. Anna cried and begged for forgiveness. I was silent. I wondered when Anna would realize that everything had changed. I didn't have to wait long. Max, she asked as we got closer. What's going on? She saw the heavy machinery and the house that had been razed to the ground. She kept staring into the twilight as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. I remained silent, waiting for her reaction. Max. She turned her head between the changed buildings and looked at me. Where is everything? My house, my office, my gardens? Her voice rose. I decided to develop the estate. I got a good offer for the land, I said calmly. 28 houses will be built here. I got a very good price. I think everything will be fine, I said with false enthusiasm. You sold our house? What about my gardens? My business? She was furious. And then it dawned on her. What about my TV show? She screamed. I shrugged, raising my palms to the sky in a, well, what can you do gesture. Anna walked through what had once been her garden. Pieces of once neatly planted shrubs and flowers were mixed with wet earth, torn up by heavy machinery. She stood there for several minutes, contemplating the changed landscape. Did you do this to hurt me? She asked. She asked. Is this my punishment? She shouted at me. I remained silent. Answer me, you bastard! She screamed. Then she sank to the ground and sat down, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was probably suffering as much as I was. I didn't feel a shred of sympathy for her. Did I hurt you? I asked with exaggerated disbelief. We're married, and you're flying off to Hawaii while I take care of my sick father and entertain your best friend. I told her, when I found out, I knew my life had changed. Forever. And then I decided to change other things too. Your things are in this bag. I pointed to the nearest one. And here are the car keys. I handed her the keys. I need to go to my parents. You'll probably have to stay with your family, I told her and walked to the car. Max, she shouted, that's it. You ruined my garden, ruined my career plans, and now you're just leaving? Is that all our marriage is worth? She asked. I turned to her and looked at her. Don't you dare question my commitment to our marriage, I told her. We'll talk about everything, but not today. And I left. The next morning at the office, I told Yasmin everything that had happened. She knew almost everything. I also told her that Tanner would be calling and asked her to act as my secretary. Yasmin also confirmed that we had not received an insurance check from either Tanner or Texas Pacific. Their insurance had been officially canceled the previous Monday, 3 days before the fire at the house in Wine Country. In the middle of the morning, the Yamhill County fire inspector came to see me. Somehow, probably through Tanner, he had been told that I had been at the house on Thursday, the day of the fire. I told him yes, I had been there. I was picking up some documents at Tanner's request. He asked if I had noticed anything, if I had smelled anything, if anything about the house had changed. I replied that I had only been in the house once, several months earlier, so I had nothing to compare it to. But no, I hadn't noticed anything unusual. Then I asked if they had determined the cause of the fire. Nothing official, but, he said, it could have been spontaneous combustion. I frowned and looked at him in confusion. Spontaneous combustion? What? I asked. He went on to explain the properties of spontaneous combustion. I nodded, asked a few curious questions, and he left. That was the last I heard from the fire department. I asked Yasmin to handle Tanner's claims against Guarantor, the property and liability insurance company we represent. I didn't want to deal with this case. My anger at Anna was only overshadowed by my anger at Tanner. Tanner kept calling me on my mobile and work phone. I ignored my mobile, and Yasmin rejected the calls from the office. He seemed to be getting more and more desperate. Yasmin began the process of obtaining insurance compensation for Tanner through Guaranty. But if I had known how insurance companies worked, getting insurance money with a late payment would have been difficult. After numerous attempts, I finally answered Anna's morning call. "Max," she said, "we need to talk. I'm so sorry. I love you so much. I need you." She continued. I decided that this meeting was inevitable. I was still in shock over her betrayal, but I wanted to understand her. What she had done with Tanner during what was supposed to be our second honeymoon was more than unacceptable. "Okay," I agreed. "Let's meet at Coffee Clutch in Old Town at 4 o'clock. With that, I hung up the phone after she agreed to meet. We met, but without hugs or any physical contact. She kept looking at me as if assessing my condition. Anger, sadness, forgiveness. She wanted to understand where I was going with this. I decided to start. "Anna," I began, "when we first met, you knew better than anyone how much my relationship with Mia at school had hurt me." "I know. And I felt so bad that I—" She interrupted me. I raised my hand. "Anna, I'm talking." Calmly, but with irritation. "Let me finish. You'll get your say, but I think it's important for you to hear where I'm going with this." She nodded in agreement. "After Mia," I continued, "I pretty much decided to live the life of a confirmed bachelor. I went on dates, but nothing serious. But then you came along. You cheered me up. I thought you understood me. I trusted you. I thought I was cured. And now this. You not only cheated on me, but also on your ex-boyfriend, my best friend. I'm very interested to know why." I told her that. She spent several minutes telling me how sorry she was and what a big mistake she had made. I looked at her with a stone face, trying to find even a shred of forgiveness in her. Then she told me the whole story. She was thrilled about the trip to Hawaii, even though I wasn't with her. She said the sounds, sights, and smells reminded her of how wonderful our honeymoon had been. She was in a good mood. Tanner met her at the small airport in Lihue. On the way to Kaloa, he drove past a construction site. She said she was surprised at how little had been done. Nevertheless, Tanner remained optimistic about the progress. They arrived at the Sheraton Hotel, and Tanner insisted that she have dinner with him that evening. He picked her up at 7 o'clock, and they went to a local establishment called Keokai's Paradise. She was in a good mood, he was in a good mood, and tropical drinks were obviously flowing freely. Tanner talked about the good old days. After dinner, they walked along the beach in front of the Sheraton, taking off their shoes. Tanner continued reminiscing about their past relationship. Anna said she was drunk, happy, and that talking to Tanner about their school days made her feel young. Tanner insisted on a nightcap and asked to see her room. That night, he entertained her. Anna said she knew it was wrong, but at the same time she thought, since I'll never know, it'll just be a fling. She put it out of her mind and never mentioned it again. According to her, they kept in touch while she was in Kauai. "Max, please don't ruin our life over something as trivial as sex. He means nothing to me. Tanner means nothing to me. I'll do anything you want. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. Please, just think about it," she pleaded. I agreed to think about it. The next day, I filed for divorce. The thing is, that night after I dropped Anna off at Coffee Clutch, I really thought about it. And the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Finally, I realized that no matter what happened, I could never fully trust her again. I couldn't live like that. She called me, sent me text messages, and when I didn't answer, she finally came to my office. She stormed into the office, angry at me for filing for divorce. She said I promised to think about it. Why did I give up on our marriage? Didn't I have any compassion? Had I never made any mistakes? And so on. I hardly said a word. Then she started talking about how I had ruined her career at CPL. It turned out that without her gardens, they were going to reconsider the program in the garden with Anna. The gardens were supposed to be the backdrop. Without them, the show's appeal was diminished. My silence seemed to anger her. Then she declared that she was entitled to half of our property, including the house and land. Anna, that land is in a family trust. My Aunt Helen made that arrangement, I told her. But I took care of that property before we even started dating. I consulted with a lawyer. You have no claim to that property or anything in the trust, I told her. Now, if you don't mind, I need to get back to work. With that, I turned my computer screen towards me and got to work. She sat there for a minute, then got up, walked out, and slammed the door behind her. It wasn't until 3 days later that Tanner showed up at my office. I thought he was still in Hawaii. I heard a noise in the reception area where Yasmin was sitting. Before I could go see what was going on, Tanner burst into my office. Get out, I told him, pointing to the door. Max, give me a minute. I deserve this. I need to talk to you, not... He pointed his thumb at Yasmin, who was standing nearby. I was furious, but I was also curious to hear what he had to say about his financial situation and his relationship with Anna. You need to settle that lawsuit, he said, with a desperation I had never seen in Max before. I'm running out of time on the Hawaii property. I need the money from the wine country house to finish the beach house. He was rambling. I thought about what he said. It seemed like he had mortgaged the house in wine country to buy the lot on Kauai. Then he took out a mortgage on the house in wine country to finish the beach house. Then he mortgaged the lot on Kauai to buy materials to build the beach house, or something like that. As a result, he ended up with a pile of debt and owes Sydney Waingrass a beach house. First, I told him, instead of spending your time in Hawaii, you should have paid your insurance premiums. Second, I don't control insurance claims. The decision on whether a claim is valid is made by the underwriter, not me. I'm just an agent. Third, I doubt you'll get any compensation. Your policy was canceled for non-payment. And finally, get out of here. I don't want to see you again. Max, he began, turning on the charm. Listen, there was nothing going on with Anna. It was just old times. It didn't mean anything. She loves you. You're all she talks about. He really put his heart into it. I cut him off. Get out, I growled. Finally, he left. I thought about what he had done. I still couldn't count all the loans and mortgages, but one thing I knew for sure. He was in deep shit with Sydney Wainwright. Not the kind of person I wanted to have a bad relationship with. For the next 2 weeks, life went on as usual. Greg Boston was turning Aunt Helen's old property into what would one day be a residential neighborhood. My father was also recovering. Anna hired a solicitor, and our lawyers worked on the estate, slowly untangling the financial knots of our marriage. The emotional component was like a dark cloud hanging over me. When I was around people, I tried to remain optimistic and positive. But when I was alone, it was very difficult. I had dark thoughts mostly about Tanner and Anna. I decided to see a psychologist. Gradually, small glimmers of positivity began to appear in my life. One evening, a few weeks after my last meeting with Tanner, I met up with a couple of friends for drinks and dinner at a casual restaurant outside the city. As I drove to the dark car park, I began to think that maybe my life would return to normal. As I approached my car, I noticed several people standing near where I had parked. 2 large men seemed to be loitering around my car. A black Chrysler 300 with custom wheels was parked nearby. As I walked toward my car to get in, the 2 men approached me. Hey, what's up? I said as they grabbed my arms. Hi, mate, I heard. And when I turned around, I saw Michael Ameche walking towards me. Mr. Winegrass wants to talk to you, mate, Ameche said. He can schedule a meeting for tomorrow. I'm done for today, I replied to Ameche. With that, I began to struggle free from the 2 thugs. They squeezed me tighter and tighter. As I struggled, one of Ameche's assistants came up and hit me in the face from behind. I was stunned for a moment as blood flowed from my lip. Mr. Winegrass wants to see you, he told me. Guys, put him in the back seat, he ordered the thugs. It was surreal. I was being kidnapped. I was sure that Winegrass was digging into the deal with Tanner and for some reason thought I was involved. I was sure I could explain my innocence, but it all seemed so crude. I couldn't ignore the fear I felt. Our destination was an old building in an industrial part of town, not far from the docks. At that time of day, the place was deserted. There was no one who could come to my aid. I was dragged into a dark basement. I noticed that the windows were boarded up. There was a musty smell in the air, and water was dripping down the stone walls in places. Soon I noticed something else. Tanner was sitting on a wooden chair in the shadows. He looked a little battered, and his face, covered by his raincoat, was contorted with despair. This was a far cry from the confidence he usually displayed. Ameche and one of the thugs left after I was tied to the same chair. One guy stayed with us in the gloomy dungeon. Soon, Ameche and the other bastard returned. "Mr. Winegrass is delayed. He'll be here soon," Ameche told us. "In the meantime, buddy, we have some unfinished business." He stared at me intently. "Remember how you broke my leg?" he asked. I said nothing. "It's time to pay," he said to me. With that, Michael Ameche beat me while I was tied to the chair. He hit me in the face over and over again. I knew he had knocked out my teeth and probably broken my nose. I may have lost consciousness. My eyes were slits from the swelling. He seemed to be enjoying himself immensely. Fortunately, Ameche's mobile phone rang. "Me, Winegrass is on his way," he said, wiping the blood from his hands with a rag. All three of them went upstairs to wait. Max, Tanner whispered to me. "Winegrass needs the money. We have to stick together. I can find $500,000 to pay him off. Can you get $1 million? I think we can work something out, but we need to stick together. Okay, Max?" My wounds made it difficult to speak. At that moment, Ameche, the two thugs, and Sidney Winegrass came down the stairs. Winegrass was dressed in a tailor-made black suit, a white shirt, and a red tie with a knot. Winegrass was thin, his dark hair combed back. He looked like a wolf. "Michael, turn on the light," he ordered. "I want to see who I'm dealing with." Ameche quickly turned on the only light on the ceiling. Winegrass, with his arms crossed behind his back, walked around the basement, surrounding us and studying Tanner and me. "Sid, Mr. Winegrass," Tanner began. "As soon as I get the insurance money, I'll pay you back. I need Max to approve it. He was supposed to get a check from my office." He talked non-stop. So much for keeping us together. With his hands behind his back, Winegrass turned to us. "Gentlemen, I'm an honest businessman. I'm trying to find a deal that works for everyone. I believe that's the best way to do business. Everyone gets their share." He continued, "But I never want to show weakness. When you show weakness as a businessman, your partners, your competitors, even those you considered friends will try to take advantage of you. I can't do business that way," he explained. "So, Mr. Bishop," he turned to Tanner, "we agreed that you would build me a beautiful house in Hawaii. I like the idea of a house in a tropical location. I give you the money, and you spend it on finishing some other house, and then that house burns down. And you tell me you don't have insurance? Is that true?" he asked. Tanner mumbled something about the insurance company, about how I should have gotten a check and sorted everything out, and so on. In his desperation, he didn't think for a second. Winegrass clapped his hands, calling for silence. "Mr. Early," he nodded in my direction. "As an insurance agent, you have a duty to take care of your client, Mr. Bishop." Now he nodded toward Tanner. "And Mr. Bishop claims that it is your fault that he is not insured. And now Mr. Bishop has declared himself bankrupt. And I am left without the tropical house I paid for. I ask you both, is that fair?" He looks at Tanner and me. Tanner immediately starts his story about how I should have picked up the check, how it's not his fault, and so on. I can see that Winegrass is starting to get angry. The more Tanner tries to justify himself, the angrier he gets. Finally, he turns to Ameche. "Get them both out of here." And he heads for the stairs. Tanner loses his composure, resists, and argues that it's not his fault. Winegrass continues toward the stairs, and the thugs head toward Tanner and me. "Mr. Winegrass," I say. It's the first time I've spoken, and I struggle to get the words out of my battered face. "Can I ask you a question?" He stops and turns partially toward me. He nods as if to say, "Go ahead." "As a businessman, I assume you have insurance on your property, including real estate," I say. Wainwright doesn't answer, but he listens. "I'm asking you, does your insurance agent come to your office for a check to pay the insurance? Or do you or one of your employees send it by post when it's due?" He looks at me. Tanner starts to interrupt, but he is told to be quiet. "One more question," I say. If you have a tenant who rents property from you and doesn't pay on time, is that your fault? He starts to nod in agreement, as if he understands what I'm talking about. If you don't mind, let go of one hand. I want to show you something else. He nods to the first thug to cut the tape. I take my iPhone out of my pocket and carefully hand it to the thug. The bonus was supposed to be paid on 15th hour of October, I say, while Weinberg is already examining my iPhone. As you can see, I sent him text messages reminding him about the bonus on 6, 8, and 13th October. If you look at the emails I sent, you'll see that I sent him SMS messages on the 9th and 11th of October. You'll see that in my emails, I emphasize the importance of payment once again, I tell him. Weinberg carefully studies what I believe to be my emails to Tanner. I agree with you, I say to Weinberg. Part of my job is to take care of my clients. In my opinion, if I contact them 5 times in a week, the client will have ample opportunity to pay for the services I have provided. I think that's fair. Don't you agree? I ask. He looks away, nods his head, and taps his index finger on his pursed lips. He thinks for a moment. Finally, he turns to Ameche. Michael, walk Mr. Rano to his car. And Mr. Rano, not a word to anyone about this. Know that I know where you live, where you work, and I know people close to you. Am I clear? He asks. I nod silently in agreement. As much as I would like to report this, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in fear and looking over my shoulder. As Ameche and I leave, Tanner goes crazy, begging me to save him. I feel no remorse. Max, please, is the last thing I hear as Ameche and I leave the damp basement. On the way home, Ameche tries to be friendly. Hey, no hard feelings, mate. Business is business, he says with a forced smile. I don't respond. After a moment, he continues. I think we're even now. You broke my leg. I messed up your face a little. Another fake grin. I remain silent the entire way home. Ameche refuses to engage in small talk. On the one hand, I am very glad that I did not share Tanner's fate. On the other hand, I never liked Ameche, and he took great pleasure in beating me up. When we pull up, Ameche leans back in his seat and says to me through the open passenger door, Remember what Mr. Winegrass said, he tells me. Not a word about this. I look at Ameche and nod briefly. As I look at him, I think, I don't know where or when, but I'll get my revenge. Many months later, I was enjoying looking at the blue water in my swimming pool. Part of my negotiations with Greg Boston, my builder friend who was developing the site, concerned my own house. I chose a half-acre lot with a south-facing backyard at the highest point. He designed a beautiful mid-century style single-story house with a resort-like backyard and a beautiful swimming pool. The divorce was complicated. My lawyer did a good job of ensuring that I did not have to share my Aunt Helen's inheritance with Anna. She, of course, tried to get her share. In the end, I had to write her a check, but for much less than she asked for. From what I hear, she is still angry with me. My thoughts, as they often do, turn to our relationship. For some reason, I remembered the evening when Anna, Tanner, and I sat and discussed our dreams. As it turned out, none of us got what we wanted. Tanner wanted to be rich, Anna wanted to be famous, and I just wanted a quiet life with my business and my wife. Tanner didn't become rich and probably isn't even alive. Anna, at least for now, hasn't become famous. The opportunity to work with K-Pal is gone. I remember saying during our discussion that I would never become rich. I was wrong about that too. After selling my property, I quickly became a multimillionaire. And of course, I didn't have the quiet life with my wife that I had dreamed of at the time. Sometimes it bothered me, but I'd come to terms with my bachelor lifestyle. At that moment, I looked up and saw my new girlfriend with her breasts exposed emerge from the far end of the pool. I smiled. Max, asked young Brittany, will you put some sunscreen on me? Yes, I smiled. I'm not a bad bachelor. Epilogue. The ballroom was bustling with activity, everyone dressed in their finest evening attire. My date, Kay, looked stunning in a black miniskirt. Dozens of round tables were set up throughout the hall. The annual Children's Charity Ball was one of the most important social events of the year. At the far end of the hall, I saw Sidney Weinberg with an attractive woman who was at least 10 years younger than him. I decided to go over to his table and shake his hand. At first, he didn't recognize me. The last time he saw me, I was covered in blood. Once he recognized me, he displayed his refined manners. I had just established my alibi. I quickly excused myself. When I turned and walked back to my table and Kay in her miniskirt, a chill ran through my body. I needed to wash my hands. That same evening, in another part of town, Michael Ameche left a bar in the center, probably after having had one too many behind the wheel. He entered the garage and started looking for his keys. He noticed that this corner of the garage was darker than usual. He also noticed a short, dark-skinned man, his face hidden in the darkness leaning against the front fender of his Chrysler. "Boss, back off," he said to the man. With that, the man stood up and stared at Ameche. At that moment, two more men emerged from the shadows. The first blow was like a whip. The smaller man struck with lightning speed. Then another and another. Ameche didn't stand a chance. While the first man continued to kick Ameche's lifeless body, one of his companions whispered quietly, "Angel, vamonos, we need to go." The end. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and follow me for new videos.